Thank you, Trudy. Oh, it is working. Thank you, Trudy. Firstly, one of the things I always say, I'm going to be talking about communication. And before I go on stage, I have to say sometimes I get a little bit nervous. Anybody else get nervous at times when they go on stage? A few people. Very good thing which I'm going to teach you is when you're a bit nervous beforehand, I went into the toilet and I put my hand on my heart and I said, I am Doug Gordon, I am my heart. Please let me connect with the hearts of the audience in order to bless rather than impress. And what I'm doing there is intentionally speaking out loud, getting myself out of my head self, my ego self, where we edge God out, into my heart self, coming from a place of love. So I actually don't mind if I make a mistake, because all I'm trying to do is add value to you guys from a place of love. And ironically, what happens when you do that is you tend to speak more clearly and concisely, because you don't mind if you make a mistake. So hopefully today, I might be able to help you in some way or form in terms of that. Now, can I ask you to high-five somebody close by to you in order to introduce yourself and rev a bit of energy up? Is that okay? Yes. Yes, perfect. Right. Now, something that Marshall mentioned earlier on, which is related to exactly what you did there. What was it that Marshall said that is the key to being a successful salesperson, colleague, or especially CEO? Anybody want to say what that is? What are the things that make us more successful in life? Anybody? Sorry? Networking. And what does that produce? Relationships. There we go. A prize for that lady. If you want to come up, I'll give you a book for that. Congratulations to that lovely lady. Lovely. It is relationships. And I always say, I like to break the word relationship down into 3 different parts. There's a ship that goes in a direction port to port. And that can represent, in terms of an analogy, your mission statement of your company, your goals, or even if it's a partnership in terms of a partner relationship, what you're trying to achieve together, making sure that you're aligned, if that makes sense. And this is a representation. This is actually my dad's boat. He sailed across in his 60s. He sailed across the Atlantic, and he was literally, one time, apparently 50-foot waves. So it's all about energy, as I say, and he experienced some of that, I can tell you that. Now, the problem is that relationships are great when they're working, but they're not when they're not. Because the biggest problem in the world, in organizations, and between countries is miscommunication. Agreed? Yeah? And what often happens is, let's take an example of, say, a partnership in terms of a relationship with a spouse, or even a colleague. And quite often, one person looks at the other and goes, I don't think they have an absolute clue what I'm talking about. And this person goes, well, he hasn't got a bloody clue what I'm talking about either. And this person goes, he's a right so-and-so. And she goes, well, he's a right so-and-so. And they think, because they have different intentions and different expectations, and they're not aligning because they're not communicating effectively, that each of them is some kind of narcissist, because they're not getting their way. But actually, if we learn to communicate more effectively and more consciously, that might change. So in terms of this relationship word, there's a ship that goes into direction. So in order to get your staff or your salespeople or even yourself and yourself, because probably the relationship with you is the most important one, you need to be able to relay, in terms of that first part of that word, your shoulds. And that would be, in this case for me, my communications, presentations, or intentions or expectations. But what do you think is the shun that most people make by mistake? Anybody? Yeah, what do you think is the shun that people make by mistake in terms of a word that ends in shun? Anybody? It's an assumption. Because often we assume that people understand us. And when you assume, in terms of breaking that word down, you make an ass out of you and me. So instead of making assumptions, if we ask questions, it might just change things in terms of what happens. Because you hear, there's about, let's say 100 people here, whatever it is, there's 100 different perspectives of what I'm saying at the moment. Because you all have your lens. You all see the world in your own perspectives. And that's fine. And that's why diversity inclusion is such a beautiful thing, because it gives more perspectives on the problems to give better solutions for the answers. But what often happens, though, is leaders communicate to the way they speak, think, and act, and they expect the other person to as well. But the other person doesn't. So what you need to do is try and really get to know how they speak, how they act, and how they think, so that you can relate to them in a different way and create a stronger relationship through asking the right questions. Make sense? Perfect. Moving on, if I can get this to work. Boom, boom, boom. So, you all introduce yourselves. Is it okay if I introduce myself? Yes. Now, the reason why I did that on purpose, because I have just asked for permission to sell a little bit about myself. And I suggest that it's a very good way of doing it because you are all leaders in your own right. And leaders like to be in control. So I've just given control back to you. And there's a lot of nods going on there as well, which means your subconscious mind going, yes, Doug, I might actually just listen to you now rather than thinking about my washing that I need to do later on. Make sense? So, as Shruti very kindly said, I worked in the investment world for 21 years, did reasonably well. As you can see, I was in the Irish Times and the Irish Independent for growing businesses from 50 million to 1.75 billion. I then, in 2008, when the markets went through the floor, ended up getting stressed because we lost 3.5 billion in assets out the door. That stress led to ailments, to doctors, to 2 operations that went wrong. And then I had a near-death experience where I actually died. And I was encapsulating this amazing feeling of love, energy, and connection. Obviously, I came back. Otherwise, I wouldn't be speaking to you today. And I've learned now how important energy is, that when you optimize your energy, you can optimize your performance. And if you think about it, money is an exchange for energy, time, knowledge, and experience. And time, knowledge, and experience are all around energy. And your emotions are energy in motion. If your emotions are all over the place, if you're overthinking, if you're fearful, if you're worried, if you're getting anxious or annoyed, that means your central nervous system is a bit twisted. And that can mean that you could make the wrong decision in what you do. So what I do now, I'm going on to the next stage, what I do now is I help people, because I'm a coach, consultant, corporate trainer, and also a healer. I help people, when they have their goal at the end of the wall over there, I help people get rid of all the hurdles that might be in the way. Those procrastinations, those egos, those fears, false evidence appearing real. All of those things that are in the way, I help people get them out of the way so they can clear the path and get towards your goals. But a lot of you here are incredibly intelligent people. In fact, all of you are. You're very intelligent people, but sometimes you can be the most intelligent person on the planet, have the best product or service on the planet, and if you can't communicate and present that out effectively, you might be the biggest secret on the planet as well. So that's where I come in. I might be able to help you in that presentation and communication skills, because I help people craft presentations to be able to stand on stage, give that speech, and leave that legacy. As you can see, a few things here. Obviously, you saw I had a book, and I won't go into that. So if we move that on. So one of the things that was mentioned, I think it was by Jess earlier on. Jess said, one of the things is we get that purpose. And everybody talks about that purpose within the business. I think in your business, all you need to do is look at the energetics of how you add value to the end customer in some way or form and imprint that in your brain. So the oil and gas guys from TriStar, what are they doing? They're helping that granny or grandpa be able to feel warm in winter or travel to their relatives to meet everybody. They are actually adding value to the world in a massive way. So think about what you do and how you add value. Or, I also work with a lot of guys who are retiring and they're going into their third act, as I always say, and they're wondering what they're going to do next. Well, I tell you this, why don't you write down what you really love doing, what you're good at doing, and what you can add value to people in some way or form, and that'll give you a sense of purpose. Or, if I put you on a stage in front of 10,000 people, and I beamed it out on my radio show, my Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories show, to the 8 billion people around the planet, what would you speak about? What would you be most passionate about? And what legacy would you like to leave? And when you know what that is, reverse engineer yourself back to where you are today and ask yourself, what do I need to learn? Who do I need to work with? Who do I need to model? Where's Doug's number? So I can stand on that stage, give that speech, and leave that legacy. Make sense? But, as I said, quite often what happens is these things get in the way. So in my book, and I've developed this purpose-driven awareness technique, as you can see, Pat Quigley's done it, and it's to help you to be able to get rid of those blocks. I've worked with everybody from C-level execs to suicidal people, helping them be able to get out of those blocks and be able to move forward. I actually, when I died, I truly believe, because energy never dissipates, as Einstein says, energy just moves from one form to another. So based on that, in terms of reincarnation, maybe, if you're having a tough time in this life, maybe you're testing yourself to the ultimate, like a PlayStation game, to see if you can get through all this crap and come out the other side as the best version of you. Because I truly believe that perhaps if you're a spiritual being living a physical existence, why would you not come down as the king, the queen, the prince, the pauper, the invalid, the Olympian, to experience life in different perspectives, to understand the entirety of this lovely thing, the game that we call life. So, once you've cleared the box, once you've got the right sense of purpose, you then need to be able to project that out to people in a positive way. But as we saw earlier on, sometimes people get a little bit nervous standing on stage, communicating that message. So I'm going to give you a few tips to be able to get through that. I haven't got much time, so I can't go through all of them. But I mentioned the head-to-heart exercise early on already, so we'll skip over that one. But has anybody ever heard of a tiger face? No? No? So a tiger face is when I actually did this. I was speaking to 250 financial advisors and stockbrokers in Chelmsford one time. And I was only 24 years of age. I'm 51 now. And I was really nervous. And I was in the toilet. Everybody else was already in there. I was in the toilet going, roar, I can do this. Roar, I can do this. Come on, Douglas, you can do this. Roar. And as I was doing this, one of the stockbrokers walked in and goes, tiger faces, I used to do that. And I was so embarrassed by the fact that he caught me doing this. And then I got on stage, and he sat right at the front and winked at me just before I was starting, which did not help my nerves whatsoever. But if you mix in tiger faces with affirmations, I always say that you're the person to speak to yourself the most, so you might as well make it positive. Those positive affirmations can really help in terms of imprinting neuroplasticity into your brain and seeding the subconscious mind with things that I am going to be good enough. I'm going to connect with the audience's hearts and add a little bit of love to their life. I always say love is an acronym for lots of vibrant energy. And that's why it's so important to create that love. Also, gratitude. I'm so grateful from my heart to your heart for all of you coming today and listening to me for these 10 minutes. Thank you. Also, meditation. I'm sure there's a few people. Everybody meditate? Yes? Meditation isn't all about just the Meditation is about being able to visualize what you want. Visualize those goals. I work with a Star Wars actress called Tasia Valenza, and her husband as well, actually, I work with him. And he told me that she put, 20 years ago, this house that she really loved. And 10 years ago, he went in the garage and he saw it on the vision board, and it was the house they were moving into. So when you put yourself on the energy of what you want, you bring more of it to you. 3 years ago, I was speaking here, and I hadn't seen my daughter in a while because I'm divorced. I was thinking about my daughter, surrounded by beautiful Indian people, and thinking about sustainability and climate change. I left here, I went to Heathrow, I sat in the plane, and within 2 minutes, a guy sat down next to me with his little daughter who started reaching out to me from my phone. I chatted to him. He was an EY consultant on sustainability and climate change. And to his right, in the aisle seat, sitting there, was his wife, who was Indian. So when you get into that energy, when you connect to your heart self and get into a sync of flow and love, it's amazing how you put yourself in that as well. So there's just a few things. Now, in terms of presentation tips, the best tip I can give you is this voice box that we have is an instrument to be played. Has anybody enjoyed my enthusiasm and energy that I put into the emceeing? Hands up. Thank you. Lots of hands everywhere. And the reason why I do that, when you speak to me outside, I speak obviously very seriously and sincerely. But when I'm on stage, I'm still serious and sincere, but I'm utilizing my voice box with energy and fluctuation of emotions to be able to touch your heart in some way or form. And that is the aim that you want when you're speaking to clients. You have the visual of seeing me in my slides. You have the audio of hearing my voice. But you also have the kinesthetic in terms of those fluctuations of energy and movement to be able to maybe just remember this presentation. Now, the other thing I always say is eye contact. Quite often people scan the room. But actually, quite often, it's great to make a point to one person and then move on to the next as well. I actually did this at Croke Park, which is the biggest stadium in Ireland, 70,000 people. I was speaking there, I did it to 5 people. All 5 of them contacted me on LinkedIn afterwards. Try it, it really works. The other thing, which is a bit of a joke, but I often say body positioning. A lot of men sometimes do this. But then when they don't realize, they start doing this when they're speaking. And it's very embarrassing sometimes. So be careful where you put your hands. Use your hands to express in positive ways. I won't go through the rest. And the last thing I'll say is, I'm not going to take them now because I've only got 10 minutes. But I would normally now, if I had longer, ask, does anybody have any questions now? And the reason why you always ask questions before the end is because what happens is then, if someone takes you off and sidetracks you with a question that completely changes the topic, you'll never remember everything I've just said. So do your questions before you summarize, which I'm about to do now. So, get this to work. We're talking about sustainability. And the sun gleams at us every day, even if the clouds are here today. It gleams down. So in terms of my summary, in terms of gleams, have a goal for what you're trying to achieve. Be grateful for standing on stage. Give to others and serve from your heart. We mentioned earlier, Marshall mentioned about letting go. Well, the past is history. The future is a mystery. Live in the now. The present is a gift. You can't plan for the future in the future. You can only plan for it now. And learn from others. All of you here have something to share. Everybody you meet comes into your life for a reason. Be curious. Ask questions. Emotional intelligence. We talked about that awareness. We also talked about conscious communication, empathy, compassion, and also self-regulation. Authenticity. Be yourself. It's the best version you've got. And finally, meaning. Meaning. Have a sense of meaning and purpose for what you do. Life starts as a child, but really life starts when you find out what that purpose is, whatever it is. But remember, as well as having a purpose and a meaning and goals that align towards that, also remember the true meaning of life is to enjoy life. And the gift of those 5 senses, of being able to see the sun, the sea, the stars, and the sky, is a gift that a lot of people don't have. The gift of being able to hear the whistle of the wind, or a child saying, "Mummy or Daddy, I love you." Or the gift of tasting some wine, maybe later on. Or my favorite, the gift of a hug. So go out there and give many hugs, as many kisses, as many kind words, and live a life of love with lots of vibrant energy. Thank you very much, everybody.